You are listening to the Sinister DreamCast Network.
So, what's the plan?
I'm gonna start shaking things up.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Don't say that. What? That? What? That?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?
Well, gentlemen, you have my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Hello, and welcome to the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nick Kazina.
And I am a host of this podcast as well, Joe Conniff.
Thank you, Joe. Very dramatic.
Yeah, thank you.
And speaking of dramatic, we both saw Rogue One.
Yes, of course
So,
we did.
Top of the episode, as per usual. This is not a spoiler-free talk about the podcast, about the movie. We're going to be giving spoilers because, first and foremost, this podcast is about Joe and I's friendship. So we're going to be talking about it as friends would talk. Two friends who've seen a movie would talk about a podcast. So, right now, we are not even 2 minutes in. You now know that we are going to be talking about spoilers. So stop right now.
And also, Nick had said to me, he had sent me a text because I wasn't sure if I would be able to see it before Tuesday today. I was, quite easily. But he was like, we're not going to be able to do an Inside Out. We're just going to have to wait until we both see it. Because there's just no way for one of us to talk about this movie in depth and not just give something away. Because people that haven't seen the movie, they're like, how is it? I just go, it's good. Go see it. And then that's all I say. Yeah. I say nothing about it because I can't.
Yeah, you really can't.
And it's not like this movie is so full of information that you're just going to, like, spoil the movie. I mean, I don't think there's a ton in this movie that is earth-shattering, shocking to the Star Wars universe. In fact, I don't think that there's really anything in particular that's earth-shatteringly shocking to the Star Wars universe. But the story itself, you really don't want to tell anybody what goes on in it because
you kind of lose something by not seeing it fresh.
Yeah, I think there's something about it that, like, you don't know anything about this, and there's a reason for that. The story's set up kind of that way intentionally. So, so that being said, everyone dies.
Yeah. All the main characters that you get to know die.
Which is something that we wondered on this podcast a while ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Justin came over last night and he had a really good thought saying, which was, did you enjoy Star Wars meets the Red Wedding? So, I know, I just realized as I was saying it, Joe, you don't necessarily understand that reference 100%.
Not 100%,
but,
no.
Yeah. I forget that you don't watch Game of Thrones, because it seems like something you would watch.
Yeah, I don't know. I have never watched an episode, so.
I think you would enjoy it. But, that being said, Joe, what did you think of Rogue One, a Star Wars story?
I want to say that after this, that this is the first and maybe only and the last genre of fan service film. Because that's what I think this whole movie was. It was a giant fan service. All the way down to even the plot. The plot of the movie is to basically disprove a common knock on Star Wars is how easy it was to destroy the first Death Star. And the whole movie explains why that was. I mean, and then beyond that, all of it, whether it's the cameos, I don't think really, all but one I would say was, fine, but there's a ton of cameos. The R2-C3PO cameo is shoehorned in there, I think, just solely to say that R2 and C3PO have been in every Star Wars movie.
That's fair.
And that's really it. Everything else that's in there, I mean, that you'll notice, and I think there's more in there that some people haven't noticed yet, or that I especially didn't notice, but it's just for the fans. So much of this is just, and it's for the fans that didn't like the prequels. Straight up.
Yeah, I was going to say, this movie really seems like it's geared towards Generation 1A Star Wars fans. Not even so much our generation, the 1Bs, as I like to call us. This is very much to the people who saw Star Wars in 1977 or saw all of the movies in theaters. Like, that's what this movie was geared towards.
I completely agree. And the fact that I feel like this movie is not as emotionally heavy as they, could have let it be. I think they wanted to go even darker, but they just kind of eased back the throttle a little bit of that and went with more of sort of an action-y movie anyhow. But I think a lot of just the information that's going on in, you had Red Leader, Gold Leader in Scarif, and Red 5 going down, and all these things. And then the more I started to watch this movie, Nick, the more and more I realized, oh, we may not see any nods to Star Wars Rebels, which we did get. To me, I only caught the one where they called Syndulla over the loudspeaker.
Chopper's in it.
I heard that.
It.
I didn't see this. Yeah,
I didn't see Chopper. And the Ghost.
Apparently, the Ghost is in two things, but again, I didn't see it. Did you?
The Ghost. Yeah, I saw the Ghost is in the Battle of Scarif, and the Ghost is parked at Yavin 4.
Okay. The only thing I really caught was them over the loudspeaker at Yavin 4 about
General Syndulla. Yeah,
I heard that, and I went, oh, okay. And I thought maybe I heard her voice. I heard Hera's voice in Scarif, but it was hard to tell.
Yeah. They did say Karabast, which is Zeb's.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I noticed that, but
I didn't notice it until I read an article about all the Easter eggs, and I was like, oh, yeah, he did say Karabast.
Yeah, I'm okay
there
reading
was so much
articles
going
about,
on.
I don't know about you. I'm totally okay reading articles about Easter eggs after I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Because then when I go see it again, I want to find those things.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have built a live RIL chopper. And apparently that's the chopper that was on screen. It happened. The scene is whenever they run to Mon Mothma, telling her that the Rogue One has engaged a battle on Scarif. He is in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So I'll be looking for that.
I was also, in terms of fan service as well, I was catching a lot of Dark Forces Jedi Knight references, and there was a lot of things in there that just made me go, man, they must have played the shit out of that video game when they were kids. And it's hard to tell if it was Gareth Edwards or the screenwriters or the production designer. Somebody in this movie had a hand in going, oh, we're putting this in here from this video game, because a lot of Dark Forces and Jedi Knight was about, prior to A New Hope and things like that. Well, not so much Jedi Knight, but Dark Forces was, it was a lot about, stealing the Death Star plans. That was one of the missions in Dark Forces. So I'm sure they bowed down to said references because they were like, okay, yeah, that would be the only thing that they really have that has that information, other than probably some EU books about it.
Yeah.
So, fan service. The whole movie was just filled with it, just chock full of it, which is interesting for a movie with a bunch of characters that you don't know. So
yeah.
But, and Force Awakens was a little bit fan servicey too, of course, but more on the nostalgia side of things.
Yeah.
Force Awakens didn't do much beyond the nostalgia. There wasn't much in there in terms of fan service, because pretty much everyone from the original trilogy is gone at that point, except for those that you see that have survived. This one, pretty much every character that you love, is kicking.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, if we're going to start out on a high note, we got to talk about the last 10 minutes of this movie.
Which is fantastic. The third act of this movie is fantastic.
The Darth Vader scene probably might go down in history as one of, if not the greatest Star Wars action scenes ever.
Really incredible, so well shot, shot like a horror movie.
Like a horror movie, like a slasher villain. And never have we seen Vader do this. We've never seen this. We've never really gotten this. This is the Vader we've wanted for so long on screen. And we really never got it. Because even Anakin, like killing the kids and stuff, really didn't satisfy me. Anakin Skywalker murdered kids, and I was like, that's not. You didn't show. Like, I should have seen that play out. With a little more detail. This is like detailed. You saw the fear in the eyes of people that he was about to just kill.
I wasn't sure if they were going to get the plans through.
Yeah.
I know they got the plans through. I've seen A New Hope, but it was so well shot and so well done that I'm like, wait, are they going to do this?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
And you're like, Jesus Christ, yeah. And then, like, you didn't really know where they were. I wasn't totally certain where they were, so, like, I thought he was already on the blockade runner.
Yeah, I did too.
So I was a little confused. I was like, this is not how
I thought there was
going to
be overlap.
Yeah. I was like, this is not how I remember it at all. It's like, please don't rewrite history. I mean, this is awesome, but don't rewrite it. But then they show them getting away, and I was like, that's a really cool idea. Like, a really cool idea to go that route.
Yeah.
And the best way you can kind of have a happy ending, per se, in this movie.
Yeah, because there's very little happy at the end of this movie. But
there's very little happy at all in this movie.
Yeah, it's true. For a movie that, like, the central theme is hope, there is,
It's doom and gloom the whole way, man. It is doom and gloom.
It really is. Another good thing about it is that we finally see why the Rebel Alliance wants to oppose the Empire so much. Because the Empire is, like, a force to be reckoned with. That was something that, like, you could argue is lacking in the original trilogy, is that the Empire kind of seems like, how did they control the entire galaxy?
Yeah.
A couple times. Not so much in Empire Strikes Back. It's aptly titled. But, I mean, in times with, A New Hope, and especially in Jedi, you're like, wait, why are they feared? Rogue One does a really good job of explaining why the Empire is feared.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they show just how influential the Empire is on the galaxy.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, they also required us to jump around the galaxy a ton in this movie, more than any other Star Wars
many
movie.
new planets.
So many. Almost too many. But, I mean, to the point where when we show up on Yavin, I'm like, oh, a new planet. And it's just like, that's Yavin fucking 4. Like, this is the planet you've all been waiting to see. And by the time we got to it, I was like, hi, we're on another planet. Like, that was... Yeah. I mean, it took me a long time for the process. I'm like, oh my god, we're on fucking Yavin. Like, this should be like, I should be like excited about. This should be, everyone in the theater should be like, we're on Yavin. But no one cares because we're just on another planet that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different planet every day, I feel like, in this movie. And, but in doing so, it also kind of shows just how far the Empire has its reach.
Yeah.
And just how much effect it kind of has.
I mean, it had a totalitarian grip on every single planet that we visited, with the exception of Mustafar, which didn't really have a totalitarian grip, but Vader was there, so...
There's nothing there but Vader, it seems like, as it's presented, pretty much. Which is interesting, isn't it? That he kind of has his sort of solitary base there, like...
Yeah.
It's almost a way of sort of, I don't know, indicating that Anakin Skywalker still exists.
It's him, it's guilt.
Yeah.
It's him, sitting there with his guilt.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this is where I essentially killed my wife.
Yeah. Which
I was left for dead.
Probably feeds into the dark side. I'm sure guilt is a major proponent of the dark side, so it probably makes him stronger in some ways.
Yeah.
That being said, that's both of the main scenes with Vader are incredible, and I thought that scene with the Krennic was very good.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good because you kind of see Vader as the leader that you like seeing, like the throwback leader,
Yeah.
He's still going to use his fear and everything like that, but there's also like this understanding of respect that Vader has, that he lends
throughout the
people.
entire Empire.
Yeah, he just lends respect. He doesn't really trust in it, and he doesn't really fully give it to you, but he does lend it out. Just enough to get the job done, whatever that is. Whatever the job is, he just needs it to get done. And he lends it appropriately out to Krennic, and I think Krennic, shares, because there's a difference here. I mean, he could treat Krennic like crap and just be like, go do your job, and then why is Krennic going to go do his job? Krennic's got a huge ego, a massive ego problem, He's going to be like, fuck you, Vader, you know what I mean? Like, that's clearly his deal, but Vader deals with him in a way that's like, just so you know, I can kill you, but I'm not, because you serve a purpose to me right now.
Yeah. Did you have a problem with that line?
No,
Don't choke on your ambition?
I really didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I thought, I don't know if humor is within or outside of the character of Vader, in the sense, like, we've never really seen him, like, crack a joke, really. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the first time we've ever seen him really crack a joke. But at the same time, again, I think he's kind of lending Krennic some respect. And he's sort of, his sort of joke is sort of his, way of showing respect to Krennic.
See, I don't even see it as that. I just see it as him just putting an exclamation point on the fact that, I can kill you whenever I want. Like, I don't even see it so much as a joke. Like, because the way that James Earl Jones delivered it, it doesn't really play as a joke. It plays as him reinforcing the fact that, I can kill you with so little effort.
I think it might be the first time people maybe should start to realize that pun might not be a joke in this situation, but the pun is a threat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, puns don't necessarily have to be jokes.
Yeah, this pun is a threat. It's tied solely to the fact that he can kill him, and he can do it whenever he wants, and he doesn't really need to try. Him being alive is completely because Vader decides that he wants to keep him alive, or that he doesn't care if he is alive or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Krennic kind of enjoyed the way he does business. Krennic has kind of a smirk on his face when Vader's walking away. He kind of likes likes his style.
Yeah. Did you also notice that it's the Rebels Vader design?
Yeah, it's a very
because he has the red eyes. He has the red.
Yeah, he has that like red tint in the. Yeah, I thought they didn't make major changes or anything, but they didn't change the helmet like they did with Rebels, which is more of like the McQuarrie drawings. Mm-hmm. But still sort of considering like, hey, it's very possible that he changed some of his. He doesn't have just one helmet, so.
He accessorizes.
Yeah, he's got some accessories there, Vader.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where else we can move on to from here.
Yeah, exactly. Those are just... So, my biggest thing about this movie, and I did enjoy the movie quite a bit. I liked it. I think it deserves to be part of the Star Wars canon. But my biggest problem with the movie is... Acts 1 and 2 do not feel like Star Wars. Act 3 feels like Star Wars. And that was my biggest concern with this movie going in. And I was a little upset that my biggest concern was not addressed, for lack of a better term. Not that Lucasfilm has to call me up or anything like that. It's just, for lack of a better term, it wasn't addressed. And it kind of got away from them a little bit.
Yeah, the beginning of this movie jumps around a lot. Almost Suicide Squad-esque in its jumping around. And this is concerning that this movie did this and Suicide Squad did this. They do this jump around from point to point to set up characters because it's going to be an ensemble. And that's just not how you tell an ensemble story. It never has been. It's not an effective way to go about it. It's similar to how we ended episode 3 with a checklist, but you're starting the movie off with a checklist. It feels artificial. It makes it feel like you're going through the motions of the movie. And there's nothing entertaining about that. There's nothing entertaining.
It's more like due diligence.
Yeah, it's like we got to do our homework before we watch this movie, is what it feels like. Instead of like organically introducing characters as they're necessary.
Yeah.
It just sort of felt like as we stumbled around the Star Wars universe from place to place, when we are introduced to Cassian, I have no idea who this guy is, and there's the first scene takes place in an alleyway. He's yelling at some guy. They use the word planet killer or something really cliche that you're like, I wish I'd never heard that in a Star Wars movie. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want anyone calling anything that in a Star Wars movie. And then, and then he shoots some stormtroopers, and he shoots the guy, and it's just...
You don't like him.
Yeah, it's a terrible fucking scene. You don't like him. It's terrible. You discover like nothing. You learn nothing, and it's confusing. You don't know who that guy is. You're like, is this a bad guy? Is this a good guy? Like, I think they wanted you to be on the fence about where his loyalties are, but I shouldn't be wondering if he's like gonna be one of our villains. You know what I mean? I'm like, is this like a Boba Fett type thing, or is this a I mean, I assumed Diego Luna was going to be of the love interest side of things. Like, he showed up in the posters alongside Felicity Jones. I assumed, but the way that scene played out, I was just confused. And really, there was no the environment that he was in. We had no attachment to. We had no understanding of why he was there and what he was doing, and none of the setup scenes were very good. The very opening scene of this movie is very slow. It's very slow.
Yeah.
It's not the tension builder that I think that they thought it would be. It provides backstory, and you sit there and you're patiently sitting through it, and you learn what you got to learn, and we move on. And you're like, okay, but then it just keeps going with this. We do it with the Saw Gerrera and Bodhi. We do it with Cassian. We just keep jumping around, and it's just and it's a problem with this movie that I had early on, and it continued throughout the movie, was the editing. The editing was bad. Let's just put it that way. The editing is bad in this movie. I notice it too often, and even in the action scenes, although the action was very good, it doesn't linger on anything. It doesn't really linger. There were moments that should have emotionally lingered, And a lot of people have confused this, I think, with thinking that the movie should have been longer. People were always like, oh, the movie should have been longer. I didn't learn enough about these characters, so their death scenes didn't matter quite as much to me. I feel like we could have learned more. I don't think that was it. I don't think the movie should have been longer. I think we should have hung around longer in scenes.
I think it should have been a more tightly written script.
Yeah, probably.
The script is not for having... Because I can't remember the guy's name off, but he wrote Michael Crichton, which is a fantastic movie, but like... For having the caliber of writer that they have, this movie is not tightly written, and it should be. And like you said, Joe, like the jumping around of introducing characters, like really there should have been only two jumping around. We should have went between Cassian and Jyn. Those should have been the only two
and the
jumpings. How so?
Well, if we needed to jump to any information with the Empire.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Well, I mean, I was talking about
Krennic,
specifically...
I'm saying,
Oh, yeah. But I was saying, like, introducing our characters, because you could have introduced Bodhi after Jyn finds out why the rebels freed her. Like, we could have stuck with Bodhi on Jeddah for a while. That scene could have gone on. It didn't have to have, like, the whole, like, Middle Eastern vibe to Saw Gerrera's troops, taking him in.
The whole Saw Gerrera thing was handled horribly. I just wasn't crazy about the way that Forrest Whitaker. We praised how great of a job he did in the trailer, and I feel like that's not the Saw Gerrera we got at all in the movie.
No,
completely different. I just didn't like him at all.
Like there was a lot of jumping around, and again, that should have been in the script. You know what I mean? Like, the editor shouldn't have had to do anything. Like, the script should have been tight enough that scene should have just fucking played out. When we had Bodhi, it should have jumped to Jyn. We should have stuck with Jyn, introduced Cassian, go to the Empire, go back to Yavin 4, have everything explained, then we jump back to Jeddah. and then we get to meet Saw Gerrera. Because for a lot of people, if you haven't watched Clone Wars, you don't know who the fuck Saw Gerrera is anyways.
Yeah.
So what does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Why we needed to see Bodhi getting captured and all that stuff, like, I don't know why they felt the need to drive the point home that they are these radical extremist rebels. Like, you could have just told me that and I would have believed you. You didn't have to make an example of Bodhi. And I think if they are...
Yeah.
All we hear about is this pilot throughout the first act of the movie. There's really no reason to show him until they find him. And it would have been much more... It confused
me.
It confused me too. And I think Bodhi would have had a much bigger role if he's this mysterious pilot that they have to find. And then they find him. Captured already, you know? In the cells of Saw Gerrera's hideout. Like, there would have been, you know, we didn't just see that scene with the slug. Like, what was that? And then, like, what?
There was no payoff to that whatsoever.
None whatsoever. I thought maybe his brain was going to be scrambled the rest of the movie, and he was fine. He was fine after that.
I mean, it's not even like it's a creature that we're familiar with in Star Wars canon, so it's like it's a fan service thing. Like, we've never seen this creature before. It looked horrible because it was one of the few purely CG characters.
Yeah, and
it made us not like Saw. Like, you don't give a fuck about Saw.
And again, it's like driving home the point more that this is an extremist... I don't care. Just tell me it is. I'll believe you. You don't need to, like, make an example of it.
You made an example.
Yeah.
You make an example in Jeddah City. Whenever Saw's men attack the Empire. Because we've already established that the Alliance is essentially a government. Like, they're an unrecognized government trying to work against the Empire. All you have to show is Saw Gerrera's men hitting the Empire like they do in a terrorist-like manner, and we get that they are an extremist faction. Like, you don't need to, like, make us question them in some manner.
Yeah.
Like, it's not efficient.
They dropped about 3 layers of almost, like, informational context and subtext to Saw Gerrera's crew in the first act. Like, multiple layers, right?
Yeah.
Why would you spend so much time adding all this depth to a place you're literally just going to level in the first half an hour?
Yeah.
It's gone. You can never come back to it.
The Holy City specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone, so, like, we can go to it in a prequel or something, but that place is gone, so... Why did we spend so much time developing that space and putting so much depth when we could have spent that time getting to learn Jyn Erso, who, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is a Gareth Edwards thing, but his main characters are bland in all of his movies.
Yeah.
They're just boring.
She's boring until the third act.
Yeah, I mean, like, God bless Felicity Jones, I think she does a fine job, but the character just doesn't really have much for me to cling on to throughout the entire 3/4 of the movie.
And on top, we get it with whenever she sees the hologram that her father gives Bodhi, because we get to see it's a beautiful scene. Like, what's his name? Fuck, I can never remember his name. The actor who plays Hannibal.
Mads Mikkelsen?
Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen. Does like, that monologue is fantastic. The sincerity and the heartbreak and the emotion in his delivery that he did all of this for his daughter. He's thought about her every single day. And then whenever he calls her Stardust, you're like, oh god! Yep, that's her Stardust right there. But then it's ruined because we're fucking cutting back and forth to Cassian and what's happening in the other part of... Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about Cassian right now.
It's a running problem in this movie where we cut away and it's the meanwhile back at the ranch sort of style of editing.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna go back to here now to move the story along. It's like, maybe we should stay where we are and let the emotional gravity of this settle in on the viewer. And that just doesn't happen in this movie. And it hurts so many scenes. It hurts the action scenes. It hurts the emotional scenes. It hurts every part of this movie.
You're castrating Jin, our protagonist's motivation. Because up until that point, she doesn't really have much of a motivation. She has very circumstantial motivation.
Yeah.
And that scene is her motivation for the rest of the movie, and we're castrating it.
Yeah. Yeah, we just kind of gloss over it.
Mm-hmm.
This movie had a major sound problem, too. I know that they threw the score together in like 4 weeks or something like that. It was a rush job, which is sacrilegious for a Star Wars movie, by the way. But the sound in general was very bad, and talking about just sort of castrating something, they do that with their own action scenes sometimes. How many times in this movie, Nick, did you notice that, like, they're being chased by stormtroopers, and one person just turns their back to the stormtroopers to pay attention to something else, and everyone else is like wasting stormtroopers behind them. It's like we'll just be like in an action scene, and suddenly a character will literally force you as a viewer to disengage from the action and pretend like, oh, it's no big deal, don't worry about it, they're just stormtroopers. And it's like stormtroopers are never a threat in this movie whatsoever to anybody. But
at the same time, they're a better shot in this movie than they've ever been.
But it's just one of those things. It's like they should still be a threat. Like there should still be a sense of like we got to take care of this. We like it makes the stakes. It lowers the stakes. You know, it makes it seem less dire of a situation when there's 4 stormtroopers chasing you. You're just kind of like willy nilly, just kind of shooting, and like you're like, oh, what's this over here? And the sound and the action drops. You know what I mean? Like the sound and the action shouldn't be dropping in a war movie. Anytime there's action, that should be on the forefront.
Yeah.
So I thought audio was played very poorly, and that just goes into the entire editing team. I don't know if they were that rushed, but you can't even say that it was that they were rushed, because it was editing choices that I think really hurt this movie.
I agree.
Scarif is probably one of the most exciting scenes in this entire movie. That fight scene.
And also
that
one of the
battle.
One of the most beautiful planets we've ever seen in Star Wars, too.
Yeah, very tropical. We haven't really seen like a full-on tropical beaches sort of planet. So it was looked like a great place to go on vacation.
But
like
that's what I imagine it was before the Empire.
Right? Yeah, really nice resort, you know. But even there, like we would cut to Jin and Cassian, which, by the way, in a movie that basically takes what a stupid decision by the Empire of the Death Star, right? It basically knocks away that entire problem. You know what I mean? It's just like this is why the Death Star was so easy to destroy. They single-handedly in the same movie show a device that the Empire created that it can only be chalked up to illogical and stupid, which is, I think, what is going to be known as the claw machine of data.
Oh yeah, I thought that was weird too.
Like, why on earth, if you have a giant tower of data, you wouldn't just, I don't know, select a letter number grid or something and it would just go get it? Why you would have to go, we found it, now go get it with this extremely complicated claw machine. And it's just like, she's like trying to line it up. I'm like, this is absurd. Who made this? The whole thing looks insane. And then like, well, we gotta climb up there now. Like, that's the analog, like, decision. If this machine goes aflaw, you then have to go rappelling.
Yeah.
Like, who made this thing? I'm just like, whoever... For all the criticism that the Death Star design got for all the years, now we have something else to make fun of that the Empire made. But anyway...
I understand, like, I feel like what it was is, like, we need some sort of scene to get tension. And they're like, well, what if they're climbing? Okay, great. What would they be climbing? Well, what if the data banks were A-tracks?
Yeah.
And they have to get... Yeah, it's just...
And that's my other thing, Nick, is I think that scene was meant to have tension, right?
Yeah.
But, compare it to A New Hope, where we go from, Luke up in space fighting TIE fighters and taking on the Empire, and then we cut back to who? Vader and Obi-Wan. And there's really little action going on there. It's a lot of tension. It's very psychological. It's a duel. So it changes the pace, right? We go from this breakneck pace action explosions, and we come back to Obi-Wan and Vader. And it's quiet. It's dialogue-driven. It's psychological. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when someone's going to swing next. It's full of tension, you know? We had the same setup here, except for whenever we cut back to Jin and Cassian, there's really no tension here. There's no one's really chasing them. They're kind of locked in a vault, literally. Like, they're just locked.
Yeah.
You know, and there's not really... They're not on a timer or anything like that, at least not one that we're really aware of yet, because the Death Star is it's on its way, but there's not really, like, the Death Star's coming.
But you also
kind of
forget about it.
You do. You completely forget that the Death Star is on its way, which is insane. That should definitely be a thing that we're aware of. Like, hey, we gotta move here, the Death Star is gonna come. Which would have made their death even crazier, right? Because you just expect them to escape. But when the Death Star shows up, it's kind of written on the wall there, no one's escaping this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's really no race against the clock in that moment. You know, and Krennic isn't anywhere to be found in that moment. He's, like, on his way over there, but he's not... There's no race there. And then when we're there, we're not really hanging around that long. We're just hanging around to see what they're doing, what they got to do. It's like, okay, that seems pretty straightforward. And then they go do it, you know, and then that's it. And then they got to go and they got to climb, and then they go climb. Like, there's not really, and we don't hang around there long enough to really feel like the two of them are in danger at all. We just cut back to see what they're up to. We see what they're up to, and then it's like, okay, let's get back to the action. We shouldn't feel that way. It should break up the pace of the action. Another thing is, when we're in those scenes with Cassian and Jin, we're still cutting away very quickly. We're still cutting within the scene quickly. We're not hanging out and seeing the scene from a wide angle or even just a close angle quietly and just sort of seeing the characters' faces and the tension and, like, them thinking and looking. And there's no moments with these characters either. Like, we're not sitting here feeling like they're bonding over this anyhow. So there's not really anything being added to any of this.
The one thing that I have noticed is Rogue One, unlike the majority of Star Wars films, is a plot-driven movie instead of a character-driven movie, which is fucking insane when you think about it, because it's about characters stealing Death Star plans, so it should be more character-driven, which I think I attribute to the fact, and this is a compliment to Garrett Edwards, is this movie is shot like a movie pre-1977. It is in the style of 70s cinema, which I feel like is one of the reasons why it's so plot-driven as opposed to character-driven, because, and I'll say this all the time, in general, the 70s sucked for cinema. There's like a handful of movies that are worth watching in the 70s. Generally speaking, they're kind of garbage. So, I think that was very clever on Garrett Edwards' part, that, you know, like, oh yeah, like, this movie, you know, Star Wars came out in 1977, Rogue One would come out in 1975, 1976. Like, that, I thought that was clever. But I think that also kind of holds them back, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have a very lukewarm reception to it, is because that style of cinema was shitty when it came out, and to recreate it in 2016 is kind of shitty too.
And you also have a movie that the plot is very clear early on.
Yeah.
It doesn't really change. There's no plot twist in this movie, which is fine, but once you've established the plot, at that point, all you're left to do is develop these characters. And in a movie that's really pretty much ensemble, and all of those characters die, and we're supposed to care that they died, right? We should probably be working more on the characters.
Yeah, I mean, they did do a cheap thing for us to care about Cassian and Jin dying, where, you know, they embrace each other, which I thought was a really beautiful moment, because it wasn't romantic, but it was emotional. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I totally understand these two characters holding hands and hugging, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like, you know you're gonna die, you have another human being there to comfort you, why the fuck wouldn't you do that?
I think what hurts that, though, Nick, is that there's no moment between these characters in the movie. There's no what I like to call the, hey, how are you today moment. These characters as the male and female lead, where they're supposed to be at, even if there's an underlying tone of emotional connection between the two of them at all, There's no, hey, how you doing today? You know, there's no normalcy between them. There's tension between them in the beginning, which you expect, and then they sort of have their reconciliation. They warm up to each other, but once they warm up to each other, it's pretty much done at that point. And there's no real moment where the two of them are sort of like, and the moment's there, right? The moment is there where they're in the thing alone together, and they just don't have a moment together. They don't have a moment together where it's like
they don't really develop.
They never think to themselves with each other, which a lot of male and female characters in action movies do. We may not make it through this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, maybe you don't want to remind the audience that that's a possibility, but like, you should, because every single other story that has involved life or death situations with two male or female characters have had those moments where it's like, we may not make it through this. And sometimes it's cliche. And that's fine. And I don't need them to make out. Not what I'm asking for.
I don't want them to.
No. But what I needed was for them to kind of have this sort of personal connection with each other. This sort of, hey, like, we're in this and there's not much we can do right now. Like, let's take this moment. Like, whatever it is they can do to have those characters connect with each other so that us as humans can connect with them further. And this is a constant problem, I think, specifically with Jin throughout the movie. Cassian, I actually understand some of Cassian's behavior. I can relate to a lot of Cassian's behavior. He's a
soldier.
He's a soldier, yeah. He wants to do what's right. He wants to follow orders, whatever those are. And he kind of has an aha moment in this movie where he realizes that he needs to kind of think for himself sometimes, despite what those orders are, and think about what's right in the grand scheme of things, you know? Jin doesn't really have a really clear reason for her sort of rebellious ways early on. She's kind of just, she's kind of a nomad in the early parts of this movie, which is not... She's kind of... And she doesn't seem like she's lost. You know what I mean? I think what this character should have been is she should have felt more lost. She should have felt like she hasn't found her way, but it kind of seemed like she was like, I'm good being, Switzerland here. You know, she was happy to be neutral in everything. She was like, I'm not part of the rebellion. I'm not part of the empire. I'm my own thing, you know? And she was so sure of it. And she didn't really have she was sure of what she was, but she didn't have a goal. And then we gave her a goal, which it's like, that's the opposite of what she'd been. She should have felt lost and confused, and then she's been given this sort of goal. That would have been a little bit more relatable for people.
It's also weird that she gave up on her father, and then, you know what I mean? Like, the goal should have been that she never, because it doesn't make sense based off of what we saw between Galen Erso and Jin Erso, that she would give up on her father, because they make it very clear that even as a child she understands what her parents are doing for her. So the fact that she gave up on her father the way that she did is kind of weird.
And it's also weird that she was able to see that what her parents did for her, but not what Saw Gerrera did for her, and for her to be spiteful to Saw whenever she was older, whenever Saw abandoned her. And for her to as a child understand what her parents did but not what Saw did is sort of a lack of oversight from her. The character's just not strong. I don't know what else to say about it. She's just a boring character. She doesn't have much going on. And I don't want to be this critical of her, but this is a serious issue with Gareth Edwards' movies, is he seems to just not really give a shit. And he's kind of like Zack Snyder in that way. I'm not going to lie. Like, he kind of just doesn't give a shit about his main characters. He's kind of like, oh, they'll be fine. The movie around it will be great, and it won't. We're gonna have these great moments, you know. And you can see kind of Gareth Edwards, like he likes his great moments too, and all directors I think do. But you need to be aware that like those come because everything else is great. The great moments are a product of sort of the characters in the story being great. And I think that's why sort of the death scenes seem a little, I don't know, either
not give a fucky?
Yeah, you just don't care too much. And they kind of feel like they're not really aware of their own situation sometimes.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I mean, what's the blind force sensitive?
I can't. I just know it's Donnie Yen from Ip Man.
Okay.
I can't remember his name for the life of me. Also, probably one of the most interesting characters in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, no, he's fantastic. We care a little bit when he dies.
We do, but the guy that holds him, I can't remember his name at all.
Rank. I think it's Rank or Rake or Rack.
Yeah.
They don't actually say it in the movie anywhere.
Yeah. He kind of like comes over and like holds him in the middle of the battlefield, and you're like, you're a sitting duck out there, man. Your friend just got gunned down right where you are. Like, why would you? Like, I don't know. There's some like him and Galen have the only two like. And you know, like we said, Jin and Cassian's is well done, but like, you know, he's got a good death scene, but then like Galen's is sensationalized a bit, and then Jin's like trying to like get through that, and I think Cassian comes up and he's just like says something really insincere, like he's gone, just go, let's just go, like and it's like a line that like I'm just like, okay, this is sort of this character, but like, why does it need to be said that way? Like, why did that even need to be in the script? Like, the way he says it isn't like, hey, we gotta go, we don't have time for this. It's more like he's like, forget it, he's dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's really insincere and really distasteful. I remember hearing that and being like, fuck you, dude. Like, it'd be one thing if you were like, we gotta go, we're all gonna die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's different. Like, you gotta leave a dead body behind to save yourself. But, like, the way he says that just sort of takes you out of the whole Galen just died thing. And it's just just this arrogant thing. And it's just, I don't know. It was like, that line was just really, I was like, God, fuck you, man.
It's also it's a weird beat given the fact that he was given orders to kill him, and he chose not to.
Yeah. He's just super
it's an odd
insincere.
Beat.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought a lot of the death scenes in this were just... They were the forced sort of, you should care that they're dead now, right? Because we slowed it down here. And it's like, you haven't slowed down the movie at all. Like, why am I going to sit here and actually suddenly care about the emotional gravity of this one scene when you haven't cared about the emotional gravity of any of the scenes? I don't understand. I think the editing, I think that this movie's a lot heavier if you slow this movie down. Again, not make it longer. Slow it down. You don't need to cut away every 10 seconds. You don't have to get, back to the action. Like, this movie had some deep moments in it, I think. They're just lost. They're lost in the hurry up to get back to the action and to make something that you believe is entertaining, is what is going to entertain people. It's like there's information here that I think that the actors probably have the capability of doing, and you're just not giving them the time. You weren't lingering enough on their face. You weren't letting we as humans, that's why, and this movie's a perfect example of it too. That's why humans are not really going to be replaced by CGI versions anytime soon. I mean, I don't think this movie could be any better example of it. Tarkin looked great sometimes not so much. There were moments where I just thought, maybe we should have just recast him.
They looked good when they didn't talk.
Yeah.
That is the same thing for Leia as well. Leia looked fantastic until she said hope. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, there's the what's it called? The valley, or you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. There's just like a hollowness to it.
Yeah. When they weren't talking, they looked fantastic. Like whenever they went on Tarkin, and I'm like, oh shit, they got Tarkin in it. Who'd they get for Tarkin? And then he turned around, and I'm like, oh shit, that looks great. And then he spoke, and I'm like, not so much.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's
there
the
you see it.
Uncanniness,
Uncanny Valley. That's what it's called.
That's what it's called. And it's when they talk especially, and anytime like you have to sort of feel like the character is actually looking into the eyes of the other character, you're not getting it. You're just not seeing it. And I think this movie, and the reason I say this is, we as humans recognize that sort of thing. We read information off of the face. It's why film makes billions of dollars and stage productions don't. Because you can't see the face of the person on stage quite as well. By sitting up in a theater seat. And it's something that people in theater will never really understand why their medium doesn't connect quite as much. It's why film is so, it connects so much, because the subtleties, and it's why the performances are, some are heralded and some are not. The subtleties has information, the face, the recognition, the emotional feeling. That's why meta acting even exists, because actors believe they can't possibly capture it unless they are fully there mentally. And it's there. It completely is. But we don't get it if we cut away. Yeah. Because our eyes can't process it fast enough. And this movie doesn't linger on the face of our characters long enough.
Yeah, now that you say it, I can't think of too many close-ups.
Felicity Jones crying is when she's crying and looking at the hologram, we have a good close-up there. But again, we keep cutting away from it.
Yeah, it's undercut.
You don't make us, you don't force us to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, if there's not a moment in a movie where I feel like I don't even want to look at the screen anymore because the emotional pull of it just on the screen makes it hard to look at, the editor has done their job, the actor has done their job, the director has done their job. I mean, if you want people to care in a moment, an emotional moment, like a character dying, if you want us to care, you have to have these moments before they die.
Yeah.
You can't just throw up a scene where people are hugging and sad and expect me to care all of a sudden because this character's dead. Am I sad to see these characters die? Kinda. But I knew at the end of this movie I wouldn't see them anymore anyhow.
Well, I didn't know we weren't going to see them. I didn't know we weren't going to see them anymore, but because I wasn't sure if they were going to just throw Jin in somewhere or something like that. But it's. Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more I'm just like, yeah, Garrett Edwards not fantastic, because a lot of these problems is actually in his direction. Like, if he was a stronger director and he focused a little bit more... Because from what, as we're talking, it's like, it sounds like he compartmentalizes way too much.
Yeah.
Where, like he's saying he's not focusing, he's not paying enough attention to his main characters. In his mind, it might be, well, that's what the writer's job is.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know how he works, and it's one of the things that's one of the great questions with directors, is you'll never know how they work unless you see them work. Yeah. And until you do that, you'll never fully know. You just see the end products, which is kind of subjective at times in how you're going to judge it. That being said, the problems are on his shoulders, but the greatness of this movie is on his shoulders too. And he did direct the third act of this movie, and he will forever be responsible for what is one of the coolest battle scenes I've ever seen in Star Wars, and I think one of the coolest lightsaber scenes I've ever seen in Star Wars. Yeah. I mean, I honestly feel like, and the way they did the music in the Vader scene, I'm just going to call it the Vader scene at this point, it is Duel of the Fates-esque with a lightsaber. Yeah. And for being a movie, and it's probably made bigger by the fact that we didn't see a lightsaber the entire movie, and we've been kind of lightsaber heavy. In Force Awakens and in the prequels were very lightsaber heavy. But and it's not a lightsaber duel per se, but it is a lightsaber scene, and it might be right up there with Duel of the Fates in terms of just wowing you with we really never saw the Force used this way before on screen, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen it in Clone Wars, but we have not seen it on screen.
Just seeing it play out in real life and seeing finally Vader just whoop some ass man, it just tickled my fancy.
I mean, also on top of that, seeing the desperation in the rebellion, it was also kind of fantastic. And again, seeing why the Empire is a force to be reckoned with is very much shown in the Battle of Scarif. And even so, it also harkens back to the meeting of the Grand Moffs in A New Hope. Whenever they're talking about, like, the Rebel Alliance is entirely too well financed and, they're a threat, And you see that, like, whenever they take out the ACs, I think it is, the smaller AT-ATs. Because they took those out pretty easily. Let's face it, like, once the X-Wings and the U-Wings came in, yeah, they took those out pretty easily. So you can see why this is like a real conflict, and they did a really great job in Scarif of showing that. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I was a big fan of the sort of the way the rebellion is not built in such a black and white way that we were always kind of led to believe that there is tension, there is complications in the rebellion, there's there's ulterior motives, there's there's a lot going on within the rebellion in terms of disagreements and how they should go about taking down the Empire, because every move is dire,
Yeah.
Every move costs valuable lives that they absolutely need, and every move could make or break their entire operation. I think the only disappointing thing to me is here we got these characters from the original trilogy to kind of sort of solidify what exactly their role was in the rebellion, and we didn't really get that. And I felt like the sort of talking heads moment of this movie, which, Nick, it's funny, you and I talked about this moment, and as a perfect place to have Hera exist. Yep. And there it was, and there was a character even in there that kind of would have just been Hera if you had just put her in makeup, and because all the things she was saying were very Hera-like, and I'm just sitting there going, this could have just been Hera.
Yeah,
and it also would have made me. It would also made me go, okay, I know who that is. I know what she's responsible in the rebellion. What is the rest of these people responsible for in the rebellion? It was just a bunch of talking heads. I didn't feel like I ever really understood who did what.
Yeah, dude, I was so attentive in that scene.
Me too.
I was looking around so hardcore. I'm like, Kanan?
Yeah. Anything.
Hera?
Anything. Or just any type of Easter egg that you would have... I mean, maybe there were some, but... I mean, I didn't feel like they really threw much in there that they could have. For a movie that was chock full of fan service, they really kind of copped out in that scene.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. Like, the black lady. Mm-hmm. See, like, that scene...
You don't know who she is because no one explains who she was. It's killer. It's like, are you in charge of this... In the rebellion, what are you in charge of? Why do you get to sit at the table and have a voice? Like, who's in charge of what here? And what's that?
There were two characters like that. There was the Asian guy and the black lady. And, like, we don't know who they are. Like, we know who Bale is. Mm-hmm. I think that was Admiral Akbar. I'm pretty sure that was Admiral Akbar at the table also.
Yeah, and then I don't know the name of the other guy that was in it, but he was from A New Hope as well.
Yeah, and Mon Mothma.
Yeah, Mon Mothma, and then there was the gray-haired guy, who I can't remember his name.
Yeah. So, like, we know those characters, but, like, those other two characters, like, they mean nothing.
Yeah. They're just there to argue and create the tension, which I liked. I liked that existed. I liked that there was sort of a conflict of interest at times within the rebellion, but... And you weren't sure who all these people came from. In the mystery of it's interesting, but not having the information of what their job, like, who are you to sit at the table and have a voice? Like, are they in charge of a particular department? Like, they should have thought about who would be against such a thing. Who in the rebellion would be against such a thing, and sort of create ahead of that sort of thing. And I think they could have just thought about the infrastructure of the rebellion a little more.
It's something you can do in a movie that doesn't have 4 other movies preceding it.
Yeah.
Where, we don't, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You put the effort in to get Jimmy Smits to come back. You put the effort in to get the woman who played Mon Mothma in the deleted scenes of Revenge of the Sith to come back. But you don't put the effort in to put more familiar faces at the table. And
to also sit there and just create these characters like they're, Rebellion Leader 1, Rebellion Leader 2, and not actually understand that this is fucking Star Wars. It might be an anthology movie, but this is fucking Star Wars. Everything has a history.
Yeah.
Everything. So when you put those characters on screen, you give them lines, guess what? If you didn't give them a name in the script, someone will. Someone will give them a name, and someone will give them a history, okay? And then if you don't like that history, if you don't like how it ends up in the history of your movie, representing your movie, and guess what? That's your fault for not putting in that information. Like, tie up all of your stuff. Take care of your Star Wars movie. If you're writing it or directing it, take care of it, because if you don't, someone else will, and they might not do it in a way that you like.
Yeah.
That being said, I watched the credits for only one particular name, and I actually got 2 names, and they weren't the names that I was looking for, and I didn't hear about this. And Nick, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me personally, I mean, you and I are pretty loyal to canon.
Yeah.
As much as we don't like the original trilogy, okay, and like you were saying, as going through the process of getting the woman from the deleted scenes to be Mon Mothma and going through all of this, and I don't even know if he would have done it because he wasn't really in the movie, and I don't know if they tried, and I have no idea if they tried. I hadn't heard anything about it. I don't know if anyone has a problem with it, but for me, I think Hayden Christensen should have been in the suit.
Yeah.
I think he should have been. I think he should have been cast as that. I think if he didn't want to do it or what have you, that's up to him. But I think, and we don't know if it was or not, but I just think we didn't hear anything.
It wasn't. I looked.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he wasn't in it. There were 2 different stunt people that were in the suit. I think he should have been in the suit. He's fucking Darth Vader. He's Anakin Skywalker. He is Darth Vader in the suit until otherwise. He very much was available, I bet. He should have been in the suit. If he had turned it down, it had been a different story, but I don't think he was even asked. I think he should have been asked. And I think pretending like that shit wasn't there is sacrilegious, is pretending like there's no Ewoks or pretending there's no Jar Jar. Like, it sucks, but guess what? Unfortunately, it's canon.
Yeah. It's
canon, and I think it sort of goes against Star Wars and the nature of Star Wars and the nature of particularly what this movie is trying to be about and what the anthology movies are trying to be about, and it should have been Hayden Christensen in that suit.
If nothing else, it should have been him in the Bacta tank.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Who was one of the other people, one of the other stuntmen that was credited as Darth Vader. Absolutely, I agree.
I was even looking to see, because I was like,
it's the only credit I wanted to see. And I don't know how many people of our generations gave a shit about that, but for me, I was like, I only want to see one credit, and I want to see who was in the suit. And it better be fucking Hayden Christensen. In my head, I was like, I know it's not, but I want to see it. And of course it wasn't. So my only other complaint about this movie, which isn't really a complaint, actually I think it's kind of a compliment. This movie doesn't, to me, Nick, add any depth to the Star Wars universe. It just adds texture.
Yeah. No, totally.
Which I think is what these movies are. So that's fine.
I mean, that comes from the fact that it's a plot-driven movie, not a character-driven movie.
That too, yeah. And all the characters die. But there's no information there, really, that we didn't... I mean, there's information that we didn't know, but there's no information that really provides depth to the Star Wars universe. There's no...
A little bit, the Jedi. It adds a little bit of it, because, I guess... There's now there's a holy planet for Jedi that I didn't know about, so that adds that, but they didn't also go into it that much, so I'm like,
I thought the idea of spreading the Jedi religion was an interesting idea. It was an interesting concept that I had never really thought of, is after the Jedi Knights were effectively disbanded, the sort of religious and spiritual aspect of the Force as a religion was very much prominent in this movie, and I thought spirituality was a major theme and motif in this movie, but not for our main characters, but sort of in the background.
Well, it is canon that there are 2 different factions. There's the Jedi, and then there's actually the Church of the Force, which I can never remember his name, but Max von Sydow's character, it's not in the movie, but if you look up his character and all that kind of stuff, he is a priest in the Church of the Force. That is his connection. The Church of the Force is pretty much non-Force sensitive people that agree with the Jedi teachings that the Force binds the universe, and and they essentially worship the Force like a god. So I think that's what, because what's his face's character,
Donnie Yen.
I don't know. Donnie Yen, I think he's Force sensitive, just based off the fact Donnie Yen said he's not, but based off of how he reacts, I'm like, I think he uses the Force to see, because it really seems like he uses the Force to see. So, like there's that, but he's not a Jedi because there are no Jedi, and they said he was a monk of the Order of the Will, which kept the Kyber crystals, which is not the only planet that has Kyber crystals, because Ilum, established in Clone Wars, also has Kyber crystals where the gathering happens. Excuse me while I push my glasses up. So, like, there's that, but I don't know.
His one with the Force chant for me is going to be my new sort of
I was thinking
muttering,
that too.
walking away muttering whenever you just know it's not worth it to deal with something and it's frustrating you.
Yeah.
That's my new sort of like, one with the Force, one with me. Just sort of to calm your nerves.
Yeah. It's a good mantra. It is a really good mantra.
It's good, yeah. But I guess we'll just we'll probably talk about this again next week. I don't know if we'll do a full. We'll probably just do a full episode next week. I want to try and see it a second time this week. I don't know if I will.
Same here.
But I definitely want a second round of this movie because, I mean, it's going to be tough because I don't know if on Christmas I'll be able to go out to see it, and you know the theaters are pretty packed around here around that time. So, but I feel like there's just a lot that hasn't fully settled in yet.
I feel the exact same way. I just know that the whole first and second act kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And it took me a little while. It took me till I went to work and one of my coworkers was like, "Oh my god, the best Star Wars movie ever." And my immediate reaction was like, no, it's not. And then I proceeded. It was one of those things, like, all of my problems with it were subconscious and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then whenever I had someone with a different opinion, my subconscious just released it. And I was able to articulate what my problems were with it. And it is a lot of it has to do with the tone. A lot of it has to do with the tone in the first and second act. The third act is fantastic. It's Star Wars. It's very much Star Wars. Joe...
It feels like the war movie that we were supposed to get, you know?
Yeah.
So...
Joe, we also cannot have an episode about Rogue One and not talk about K2SO.
I wanted to get more into the Alan Tudyk droid. I feel like we didn't suck this movie's dick quite long enough before getting into, because I think actually being critical again, Nick, you and I are a big part of right now kind of being vigilant about these anthology movies because I'm still skeptical of them. Again, the Han Solo movie will be out eventually, and we'll sit there and kind of hope and pray that we don't have to see another movie that kills Han Solo. But K2SO was a great addition. I didn't feel like it was forced comic relief, which was
not
good.
At all.
I was worried that would kind of be it. I assumed that it would be comic relief because Alan Tudyk was doing the voice. But he was very good. It was very well done, and you know,
very dry.
He gets a good death scene too. So
yeah.
Almost.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like, I know that we've been super critical of this movie, but again, we started this episode saying we liked this movie. We did. I like the movie. It is totally worth your money. It's a fine addition to the Star Wars canon. I just think that people need to cool their jets on it a little bit. It's not the greatest Star Wars movie. It's not the best one since Empire. So sit down, watch it again. Let it wash over you. That's all I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, I'll probably. It's gonna take definitely a second time.
Yeah, I know. I knew I was gonna have to watch it again. I knew after I was like, I definitely need to see that again.
Yeah.
So, and I'll probably watch it 3 or 4 more times when it comes out on Blu-ray. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely gonna be. Shit. I mean, what's good is it'll probably be out by what, like March?
Maybe earlier because it's coming in Netflix in July.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So.
Jeez, oh man, the world we live in now is getting strangely wonderful and strangely terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. But, Joe, I think it's time for the vault.
The vault! I have a movie. I can go.
Good. Go, because I don't.
Something we didn't talk about because there was no time, and I didn't think that we would get to it, about the Blade Runner trailer came out, or the teaser, I should say, came out. So I am going to be doing another movie that is based on a Philip K. Dick story, which is I think the movie that came out after Blade Runner was made, and I think Blade Runner's success led to this movie being made based on a Philip K. Dick story, which is Total Recall from 1990. Total Recall gets a strange rap, this movie, because it's known as like one of the corniest and worst movies of all time, but it's not. It's actually very clever, and it's very smart, and I think just Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the prime of his... This is a movie that's very like thriller and very intense, and the action side of it should have been secondary. And I think what ended up happening is they got Schwarzenegger and they changed the whole script to be more action packed. And as a result of that, we got a kind of a bad, cheesy movie, and with terrible one-liners. And then what this ended up doing was, just like a couple years ago, they decided they would make that version of the movie that they initially intended with a remake with Colin Farrell, and instead make just like a mediocre sci-fi thriller. So I would actually, I didn't even really see the remake, but I would highly suggest watching Total Recall, the first one, because at least Total Recall is entertaining as fuck. You are never disappointed when you watch this movie. It's just what I always say about it. It's just, if it doesn't have you at the edge of your seat with the action, it has you laughing hysterically at its absurdity. And there's probably not a more wonderful balance of 90s action than that. It's definitely worth a check out. And I think it's also good because the concept is very original, and it's the type of concept that doesn't really get played enough nowadays in sci-fi, where it's clever and fun, and it's a balance between the two, and it doesn't need to just be like this Christopher Nolan philosophical heavy movie, and it also doesn't need to be this Star Trek heavy action or Star Wars heavy action sort of thing. It can be a mix of both, and I think that's what kind of Total Recall is, and I think that's what most Philip K. Dick's writing is about anyhow. It's most of his stuff has a good balance in there anyhow as a read. So if you're looking for just kind of like that old school sci-fi action movie that I think has kind of not really been balanced properly in the last 20 years or so, it's definitely worth a check out. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is just at the top of his fucking game with his absurd action and performance. So, 1990s Total Recall.
Cool. All right, I'm going to do a movie I'm pretty sure I did this movie already, but it's really fantastic, and I feel like it needs to get more awareness than it does, which is 2007 Stardust. Directed by Matthew Vaughn, written by Jane Goldman, adapted from the Neil Gaiman story. This movie is... I wanted to bring this one up because one of the things that we were complaining about with Rogue One is that how poorly, how untightly, how loose it was written, I guess would be the best way to put it. And Stardust is the exact opposite. It's a very finely tuned, well-written fairy tale, which and only in the way that Neil Gaiman can. It's a movie about this town called Wall, which is the barrier between this fantasy world that I can't remember the name of it right now, and the real world. And our main character was born of the main world, and he returns back trying to get a star for the woman he thinks he loves for her birthday. And in this world, stars, when they fall from the sky, are personified. They become human. And it's pretty much his adventure trying to get the star back to the real world. It's a really great movie. Robert De Niro's in it. He plays a effeminate character named Captain Shakespeare, which is pretty fantastic. Ricky Gervais also has a really great role. It's a really well-cast movie. Mark Strong's in it. Michelle Pfeiffer's in it, which is also something because in 2007 she was kind of near the end of her, like, I don't really feel like working anymore, and I don't have to because I'm Michelle Pfeiffer, sort of thing. So it's a fantastic movie. It's a perfect fairy tale. And it's very well written. Everything has a purpose. Everything comes back to itself. Even the things that seem arbitrary have a purpose later on in the script. So, highly recommend it if you haven't had a chance. It's on Netflix, so it's super easy to get a hold of. I just rewatched it last week, and I'm like, no, this is a fucking solid movie. It makes you tear up a little bit even. So definitely check out 2007 Stardust. So, Joe, I think that wraps up another thrilling adventure of the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast.
You would be correct.
I'm glad you agree. We gave you a big one this week, everyone. And is that really that big of a surprise? Because we're going to be talking about Star Wars. So.
Yeah, this is Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, Merry Christmas to all of our listeners. Because this comes out a couple days before Christmas. All the listeners that celebrate Christ Mass have a very merry one. And for all of our listeners that celebrate Yule, which was yesterday, if you're listening to Stay It Comes Out, have a very happy Yule as well. So, Joe, if that's the case, that means I'm Nick Kazina.
And that means I'm Joe Conniff.
See you next week, and scene.
You have been listening to the Sinister Dreamcast Network. For more from Sinister Dream Productions, check out www.sinisterdream.com.